Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to be back with you. Although, in a way, it's hard to realize where I am. It was just about 48 hours ago, I was in Jerusalem, at home. And it seems like I just blink, and I'm here in Orange County. But at least when I look around and I see so many familiar faces, it gives me a sense of home, even if it's away from home. And that's a wonderful, beautiful feeling. It's a lot like Shabbat. It's a landing place, a familiar place, a warm place. And that's why we gather together, to bring Shabbat into our lives and into our world. We create Shabbat. We bless Shabbat. We make Shabbat happen for ourselves, for our families. We bring Shabbat with the kindling and the blessing of the Shabbat lights. And so it is that we will begin our service on page 2, as we ask Sarah Schweitz to please come forward and to bless our Shabbat lights, as they flicker and glow in electric beauty.
Coming together on page 5 in the Kiddush. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'kafeh. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher ishor mitzvotav v'ratzavanu, v'shamat kodsho v'ahavat ratzon v'hinenu, zikaron lema'aseh v'rekeshit, kiruyot tekilah lemikra'e kodesh, zecher yitziat Mitzrayim.
Kivanu v'achata, v'ilhanu kidasha, v'kol ha'amim, v'shabbat kodshecha, v'ahavat uvratzon, inchaltanu. Amen. Shalom. We continue on page 7. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain or the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat abide together. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into a quiet world this day. On this day, Shabbat abide. We continue with the beautiful hymn, Yedid Nefesh, which you'll find in the middle of page 10.
Yedid Nefesh HaRahman, Yedid Nefesh HaRahman, Meshocham Lecha, Eretzon Lecha, Meshocham Lecha, Yadadalai, Eretzon Lecha. Yaru Samdecha, Kirmoya, Yishtachave Lai, Yalalai, Elul Hadarecha, Yishtachave Lai, Elul Hadarecha.
Lechu neranan al Adonai, nariya letzur yishenu. Nekadim al fanav betodah bizmirot nariya lo. Let's read together at the bottom of page 12 together. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hands are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea. God made it. And the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel. Bend the knee before Adonai, our Maker. For Adonai is our God. And we are the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. L'chadodi, come, my beloved, let us go to greet the Shabbat. Page 20.
Allah b'nei Shabbat nekabelah. Lecha Adoni, Lecha Adoni lirat Allah. B'nei Shabbat נקבלם, דרך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם. שמור וזכור ודיבור לבד, ישמיענו ערב המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושמו תפארת ונתיבה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם, דרך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, יהי נגור הברכה, מראש מקדם סוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תהילה. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באו ערב, אורי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי, אם לא נתנה עליי נקרא. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם. We rise. בואי בשלום העצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה וצודה, תוכם ולעיני עם סגולה, בואי נדע, בואי נדע. לך דודי דודי, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם, לך דודי לקראת כלם, בני שבת נקבלם.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, a song for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-stringed harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai! How very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Together, the righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in the courts of our God. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that Adonai is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. Continue on page 26 with the Chatzi Kaddish.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, אמרת רחמותי ימליך מלכותי, וחיי כל יום וכל וחייתך בית ישראל. בגלה ובזמן קריב, אמן. יהי שמירה וקרא לעולם ולעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויבעט יומם יינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה לעילא בברכתה בשירתה
ושבחתה ונחמתה דהמירן בעלמא. Amen. Please rise for the bar call.
Baruch hu et Adonai, Amen
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidbaro ma'ariv aravim bechokma, poteach she'arim bitbuna, משנה עתים ומחליף את הזמנים. ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו, בורא יום ולילה, בורא אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור, ומעביר יום ומביא לילה.
ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה.
ומעביר בין יום ובין לילה. אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המעריב ערבים. Everlasting love, you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Together, therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Shem ואהבת את אדוני
אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אני מספרך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברתם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך ושרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם Adonai Elohechem, Amen. Page 39, the bottom of the page. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. Thy heavens declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love. Together. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day when the nations will be one and at peace. Then shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. מי כמוך בהרים אדוני, מי כמוך נהדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה מרים, זה אליהו ואמרו, זה הניענו ואמרו. אדוני לו לעולם ועד, אדוני לו לעולם ועד. יא לה 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 לה, יא לה 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 אמרתי בדלני את יעקב, גלו יחזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Page 43. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו תחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום,
לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מעתה ועד עולם. השיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים. השיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, ועמידנו שומרנו לחיים.
Together, grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up, O our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, hapores sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ולדורם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ולדורם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ולדורם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השבת ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ולדורם. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש, שבת ויהי נפש. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ולדורם.
Turn now to page 46 as we rise for the Amidah.
Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Adonai Sfatai Tiftach, Ufi Yahid תהילתך ופיי תהילתך אדוני שפתי תפתח אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך ופי יגיד תהילתך ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו
אלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק, ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל, אלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, ובונה הכל, וזוכר חסדות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבניהם, למען שמו ואהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן רם בעזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיינו לצרה להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הקשה. מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשמי עפר. מי כמוך בעל גאולות, ומדרום אליו, מלך מביט ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. We continue on page 54. אתה קידשת את יום השביעי לשמך, תכלית מעשה שמיים וארץ, וברכתו מכל הימים וקידשתו מכל הזמנים, לכן כתוב בתורתך. ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויכל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה. וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. We read together at the bottom of page 54. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest. Sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness and gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai, our God, grant us as our heritage your holy Shabbat, that Israel who sanctifies your name may rest on it. Praise to you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, mekadesh HaShabbat. Continue on page 60, Shalom Rav.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Sim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Sim Leolam Ki atahu melech hadon lekol hashalom Ki atahu melech hadon lekol hashalom Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Sim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Sim Leolam Tov beinecha levarev et amcha Yisrael b'chol heitu v'choshav b'shlomecha Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Tasim Leolam Shalom Rav Yisrael Abraham Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam Tasim Leolam
In the sublime sense of shalom, which permeates the Shabbat, we can feel God's blessing in us, through us, around us. We think at this moment of those who seek God's blessing, who seek God's healing comfort, body, mind, and spirit. And so at this moment of Shabbat, quiet and of blessing, we turn in our Siddurim to page 253 for words of Misha Berach Lecholim, of words of Misha Berach for those who seek God's healing. And as we recite the words, as we sing these words, we take to mind and into our hearts the names of those who seek God's healing blessing.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us sing, Amen. With the Refuah Shalema,
renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Turn now to moments of silent meditation.
Oh, say shalom, shalom, birahma. We are say shalom, Ve'al Israel, Ve'inu Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom, birahma. We are say shalom, Ve'al Israel, Ve'inu We are say shalom, Hallelujah, for Israel, Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom, birahma. We are say shalom, Hallelujah, for Israel, Ve'inu
Have you ever wondered just who was Joseph, really? My guess is that you probably have never really given it much thought. And I don't blame you. Of course, I dare say that everybody's familiar with the basic Joseph story in the Bible. After all, it's probably one of the most famous of all the stories in the Torah, probably in all of Western literature. This Shabbat, in our reading of Torah in the annual cycle, we come to the climax of the tale of Joseph. In this week's parashah, in this week's Torah portion, Joseph confronts his brothers after they have returned to Egypt and after he has cleverly planted the goblet in young Benjamin's sack. They're prepared for the worst as they fully expect the wrath of the vizier of all Egypt to come crashing down upon them when, as we all know, Joseph, in almost Hollywood-like dramatic and grand style, reveals his true identity to his brothers. And more, as we well know, he reassures them that he has forgiven them for all their past hurts, telling them, Ve'ata al ti'atzvu Va'al yichar be'enechem ki mechartem oti hena ki lemechye shalachani Elohim lifnechem. Now, don't be distressed or blame yourselves because you sold me into slavery down here. It was to save life that God sent me ahead of you. And then, of course, the man who was the most powerful in all Egypt after Pharaoh embraced his brothers and wept. What a touching sight. This is the image that we all have of Joseph, isn't it? Joseph the tzaddik, Joseph the righteous one. But who was Joseph really? Who was it behind the vizier's facade? One thing we can be certain, Joseph was a very shrewd and capable administrator. If we look carefully at the Joseph story, we detect that in his rise to his position and how it was absolutely, without a doubt, no accident. Little information is given to us about the time that Joseph spent in Potiphar's household, but surely he must have shown great skill when he was living there. The text tells us that Potiphar, his master, quote, saw that Adonai was with him and that Adonai lent success to everything that he undertook. End quote. So Potiphar put Joseph in charge of everything, his household and all his interests. Joseph was obviously a very valuable asset. Then after the incident with Potiphar's wife, you remember that, don't you? When our hero was sent to prison, what happened? Quote, but even while he was there in prison, the Torah tells us, Adonai was with Joseph. The chief jailer put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in that prison, and he was the one who carried out everything that was done there. Joseph was one clever and capable administrator indeed. So when it came time for Pharaoh to choose someone to implement a solution to the predictions Joseph made in interpreting the Egyptian sovereign's dream, we can assume that he checked Joseph's resume and hired him on the spot. Joseph's talents made him a valuable asset in his age, thousands of years ago, and I dare say they would have made him a standout in our own time as well. Today we would have called him an entrepreneur, and he would have probably been the head of some Fortune 500 company. He would have been the kind of canny and skilled business executive who would have been tapped by the president to take on some lofty government position. And that's exactly what Pharaoh decided to do. Now, of course, we know what Joseph, as the vizier, as the chief executive officer of Egypt, did, don't we? He saved and he stored all the produce during the 7 years of plenty so that there would be adequate supplies to feed the people during the 7 years of famine. That much everyone knows. But that's only part of the story. What did Joseph, the government official with all his administrative skill and business experience, do? He was smart, this Joseph. He was canny and skilled, and as an executive, he was beyond compare. He knew how to get things done. And what he did is part of the story that many of us overlook. According to the Torah, Joseph took advantage of the famine and bought up all the land of Egypt, virtually nationalizing all the farmland except that was owned by the priests, who themselves were government officials, and turning the populace into tenant farmers. And what was their reaction? You probably would think they would have rebelled. What did they say? This is from the Torah itself. You have saved our lives, they said. May we find favor in the eyes of our Lord. We will be in bondage to Pharaoh. So Joseph established it as a law concerning the land of Egypt, still in force today, that a fifth of the produce belongs to Pharaoh. It was only the land of the priests that did not become Pharaoh's. They were grateful. What an incredible politician Joseph must have been to have taken the people's land and have them thank him for it. But he saw to their welfare, and he saved their lives. From then on, the people came to depend upon Pharaoh and to the state for their well-being. So you can see, and you can probably gather from what I'm saying, that I find the figure of Joseph fascinating on many levels. He may indeed, in our tradition, be known as Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph, the righteous one. But there's no denying that he was just as much Joseph, the shrewd and calculating one. He was a talented business entrepreneur in the literal sense of the word, as one who can find and take advantage, getting into the middle of things. He was a careful civil administrator. I'm convinced that both red Republicans and blue Democrats would find traits to admire and characteristics to offend in our biblical forebear. But his story does raise some interesting and very modern questions for us. Questions that are extremely relevant here in America today. But also, for me, from my perspective, no less so in Israel. For that matter, also in Europe or much of the rest of the world. One of the key social issues raised in the Joseph story is the role and responsibility of government and the community in providing for the social welfare of the population, especially for those most threatened and vulnerable segments of society. Another issue is the issue of the threat versus the benefit of the influx of immigrants into a society. Ironically, as we read about these issues in our Torah portion this week, Israel is preparing for its elections for the Knesset and a new prime minister on March 17th. We heard a few of us talking about it earlier during the Oneg before our service. While many outside of Israel assume that national security issues top the concerns of most Israelis, in reality, the majority of voters are concerned with growing social and economic problems and with the issue of illegal immigration and the effect of government policies on non-Jewish residents of the state. And here in America, we are running into a new election cycle, and these topics are at the forefront of the political agenda. Candidates at all points of the political spectrum wrestle with these issues because they go to the heart of the society's conscience. Namely, how do we deal with those in need? Is it society's responsibility to provide for and see to the well-being and welfare of the have-nots in our midst? And what of those who come from outside, seeking to better themselves? These are burning questions for which there are no simple answers. For Joseph, the fiscal reforms for which he was praised may have been a cause of great distress for those same tenant farmers later on. And as for the liberal immigration policies that literally saved our people, the people of Jacob, the Israelites, it was only a short time later that social upheaval led to their enslavement. And we know from history, as well as from the biblical account, that foreign elements were purged from Egypt, though the accounts differ as to the cause and effect of these population shifts that we, as Jews, celebrate in the Passover story. So getting back to the beginning of this Devar Torah, who was Joseph really? And what earned him the sobriquet, the tzaddik, the righteous one? Perhaps the key is to be found in our portion when he revealed himself to his brothers. Remember when he revealed his true identity to his brothers, he looked back at everything that had transpired between them and the whole history that brought him to Egypt and to his high office. And he said to them, God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So then it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me a father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. I think that what made Joseph a real tzaddik was the fact that he had perspective. Everything, his whole life, and all that happened weren't just about him. He could see beyond his own life, his own ambitions, even his own hurts and his own concerns, and emerge as a true visionary leader. Others saw that in him, and that is why the Egyptian people followed him and praised him, even when tremendous sacrifices were demanded of them at a time of great national crisis. I truly believe that this is the message of this week's portion for us and for our leaders, such as they might be, when confronting the formidable challenges that face us. I don't think that Joseph tried to be popular or pander to the public sentiment. He was a leader and was able to win people over to what were probably, even then, rather unpopular policies because they were for the common good. The question is, where do we find such leaders today? I know that I shall be asking myself that very question as I enter the polling booth in Israel on March 17th, and whenever I vote in an American election as well. If only the Joseph story, if only it were a required reading for all aspiring politicians. But maybe, I guess, that's only a dream. But you know, the Joseph story is, after all, about turning dreams into reality. Can you read some? Shabbat Shalom. And now it's my pleasure to call upon Sunny Sandberg, representing the TBS Board of Directors, for this week's announcements.
Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. What a delight to have Rabbi Daniel landing in our midst, reminding us about dreams and looking at the reality of the day, looking at how we create Shabbat and helping us create the Shabbat for this evening, but also reminding us that not only do we create Shabbat, but Shabbat creates us. So thank you so much for bringing that message to us. I'm just so delighted to have Rabbi Daniel here. We've got some excellent programming. We're going to take advantage of him every single moment that we can. Rabbi Daniel will be doing the Torah study tomorrow. He will also be doing services, Friday night services, Shabbat services next week, and then Torah study again that following week. We've got some really excellent programming from Rabbi Daniel's wife, Wendy Bakarski. So we're getting the teamwork here. Really outstanding programming. Really excited about tomorrow that Wendy is going to be doing on death with dignity. And this was this Wendy thought about when the Brittany Maynard case came up and challenged us all to think about not only what is the nature of life and living, but what kind of decisions do we make and how do we make it from a Jewish point of view. So I think that's going to be something that's very, very challenging. Please join us tomorrow after Torah study, and we will be listening to Wendy guide us through some very, very difficult material, but sweetened hopefully somewhat with bunch. Now, it's for a very, very shameless plug. Rabbi Danelle and I are going to be doing an evening with a good book on January 6th. I hope that you will join us. I know, talking to some of our congregants, that this book is really challenging, and I'm just thinking that perhaps you should come prepared with a shield and frisking everybody to make sure that there are no tomatoes around. But it is a very interesting book. It's challenging insofar as a graphic novel, which requires a little bit of a different reading style for you. But believe me, it's going to be so well worth your while. And we always have a good time when we do this. And having the opportunity to have an Israeli perspective as far as society, culture, and politics are concerned, and an English lit major for literature, we usually have a good combination. So please take a look at that. Let's see. We have so many good things going on. The Moshe Osher program on January 11th at the Fish Interfaith Chapel. This is a very Yiddishkeit type of situation, I think. I don't know about you, but I know my grandmother was very involved with, I heard songs and singing. I had no idea what they were all about, but I think will bring back a lot of memories, and if you don't have those memories yet, it'll help you form those memories. And there's no such thing as too much of a good thing. We also have another book review that will be done by Maggie Anton. If you had a chance to meet her, she is just dynamite. She is just a wonderful, wonderful gal. And she's going to be speaking about her book, The Enchantress. So very, very open, very, very, very enthusiastic. She's a unique person to get a chance to interact with. Mitzvah Meals continues, and as we look at the change of the secular calendar, looking back and looking forward, I think that it's something that's definitely a matter of pride for us as a congregation, for us as individuals participating in Mitzvah Meals. So please continue. And to those of you who have been, thank you. Those of you who are going to, thank you in advance. Mitzvah of the month. It's getting cold. I could use one of these sweatshirts, sweaters, and sweatpants that we do give to our adopted social worker. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say that Sarah has been there through thick and through thin since the fire, and has tended to all of our needs Judaica-wise. And thank you. We did a beautiful job during Hanukkah, so thank you so, so much. I just feel that one can never have too many New Years. And a new year, not to just turn the calendar and start all over again, but an opportunity to look back as well as looking forward and committing and recommitting, dedicating, and finding a place to land. And so to all of you and to your families, I wish you a healthy, happy, safe landing filled with shalom as we enter into 2015. Shabbat shalom.
We turn once again in our Siddurim to page 282 as we rise for kneeling.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גאולה יוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו גילויי הרצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו בהם, וגורלנו ככל העולם, אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומונים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר היה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
As our hearts and minds turn now to moments of Kaddish memory, we recall the lives of those no longer with us whose memories burn brightly in our hearts. We recall those most recently departed from our midst: Lucille T., Evelyn Lasik, Thelma Epstein, Sylvia Light, George Rusty Pomonik, and John Clement. To their names we add those whose yard site, the anniversary of the death, we recall this Shabbat: Deanna Carey, Irving Cohen, Barbara DeVallo, Lawrence Epstein, Merv Friedman, Saul Friedman, Michael Asher Hunio, Edith Hurwitz, Sarah Hurwitz, Deanna S. Chapman, Alan Corin, Barbara Margolis, Howard Margolis, Peter Newell Sr., John W. Pearson, Nathan Peck, Martin Jacob Posner, Marie Rhines, Dewey Ringel, Morris Rosenberg, Marlon Rubin, Isidore Schwartz, and Paul Lauder. If there is someone here tonight who is reciting Kaddish for a loved one whose name was not mentioned, I invite you to call out that person's name from your seats as I face in your direction. For all of those who have given their lives al Kiddush Hashem, for the sanctification of God's holy name, and for the cause of peace, we turn in our Siddurim to page 294 as we recite words of Kaddish praise to God for the precious gift of life. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shanei rabbah, ve'alman yivrach yutei v'yamlik malchutei, v'chayehon v'yomehon, v'chayedu chol beit Yisrael, v'agalav v'zman karev v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach, le'alam u'lamei amaya, yibarach v'yishtabach, yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalei v'yitalal shmei kudusha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, damiran me'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom v'yikomav, Yaseh Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru amen. May God, the source of peace, send peace to us, to all Israel and all the world, as we say together, amen. I believe we will sing. Please join us. Like our ancient ancestors, we break the plastic. As a reminder that the plastic our ancestors used to create in the land of Egypt. We sing Motzi together. But death and death must be the full time of so you open your hand and provide sustenance to all that lives. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzii lechem min haaretz, v'te'avon. I'd like you to please come and have some.
shalom במרומה הוא יעשה שלום עלינו לעמו ישראל דיברו אמן יעשה שלום יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועמו ישראל 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 יעשה שלום יעשה שלום שלום עלינו ועמו ישראל
ברוכים אתם בבואכם, ברוכים אתם בצאתכם מעתה ועד עולם. Blessed were you entering this place of worship. And so may you be blessed now as you take your leave from it, with God's precious blessing. Shabbat health, Shabbat happiness, and Shabbat filled with shalom. Shabbat filled with Amen. Shabbat shalom. Come back.